here along with Rebecca and Carissa. Thank you for all the background work that has to go into these to make the Snack and Chats possible. And also thank you to Valdosta State University for sponsoring this event. We're really happy to be able to speak with you this evening. And we know you had an opportunity to pick up some of the ingredients and cook along with Chef this evening. So I think it'll be a lot of fun as well as interesting. And this program was about protein bars and sports bars in particular. There's a lot of hype around taking a sports bar, eating a sports bar. So I thought we'd sort of, as Chef is going through this and putting the ingredients together, clarify what really is required within a sports bar or a protein bar to actually meet the needs of sports performance, or if you just want to snack on it as well. We picked a recipe here that's pretty easy to make and has a lot of common ingredients in it. So we can start off with that and then you can build up around that. So without further ado, I'm going to let Chef get started and I'll just bring in some sports nutrition information as he's going through the ingredients. Over to you, Chef.
All right, thank you, Valerie. First, I want to welcome everyone to today's snack and chat session. I will say disclaimer, I am not a nutritionist, so any nutritional information, Valerie will definitely hop right in and cut me off, especially if I say something that's not correct. But definitely, ask as many questions as you need to as far as substitutes or allergies. This does contain almonds, so of course, if you have an almond allergy, we can definitely discuss a substitution for that. My first question is there anyone here who came and picked up their ingredients who is actually going to make this with me at the same time?
Yes, I have mine and I plan to cook along with you.
Okay, awesome. That's one. Anyone else? No, okay, we'll roll with that. That's definitely not a problem. All right, so you have your ingredients, or those of you who might not have picked up your ingredients, I will cook it after the workshop. Okay, perfect, not a problem. So you have your oats, your almonds. You can use any type of almonds, basically. It could be whole almonds, could be silvered almonds, could be not shaved, sliced almonds. And then maple syrup, whatever your favorite maple syrup is, can be organic, regular, as long as it's maple syrup. Dark chocolate, I'll let Valerie touch on this a bit later about why we're using dark chocolate. Ooh, my accent came out. Why we're using dark chocolate and not semi-sweet or milk, because there are some nutritional values into the dark comparison to the other types of chocolate. And then we have our vanilla, our cinnamon. I mix my cinnamon and salt together just because it was a little easier. And then we have the almond butter. Any questions on ingredients at the moment?
Sounds good. Sounds delicious.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to alter the recipe just slightly. So for those of you who picked up the actual package, it was a half amount of the actual recipe, just because 2 cups you'd be making a lot. And I'm assuming you're just making enough for like 1 or 2 people. So you can definitely double the recipe, quadruple it, cut it in half, cut it in quarters, whatever floats your boat, however much you need to make, do it. It's a really simple thing. These ingredients really aren't too expensive. Most of the stuff people normally have at home, except for maybe like the dark chocolate chips, people might not have that lying around, or the almond butter, or the pure maple syrup. You can use pancake syrup, but I will say that will definitely change the nutritional value, because all pancake syrup really is just sugar in a syrup form. So maple syrup has some more nutrients in it, which of course Valerie can touch on that later, because I don't necessarily know the answer to that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to slightly alter the recipe as far as the steps. The steps that it tells you to take is basically put everything in a blender or a food processor at one time, except for the chocolate chips, and just keep pulsing it until it comes together. I did that earlier today, and I mean, I'm a pretty patient person, but for someone who might not be, that process might be slightly annoying, just because you got to pulse for a couple seconds. Now, if you have a food processor that has 2 bleeds, it might go a little easier, but I'm using a blender, which has a single blade in the bottom. So it took a lot more stirring for me to get that done. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm basically gonna take our oats, I'm gonna put that in our blender, and I'm gonna add the almonds to that also. So what this is going to do, it's gonna give the blender a chance to actually chop up these items without having it stick. Because if I were to add the maple syrup and the vanilla and the almond butter to this, it'll cause it to stick a little too soon for me, because I'm using the blender. So I'm gonna blend these up into a slight powder form first, and then I'll add in the wet ingredients so it can kind of come together. All right, this might be a little loud. My headphones pick up every single noise you can possibly think of. All right, so I just pulsed it a bit. Looking at the camera goes right into there. That's perfect. Say I set this up on purpose like this, I'm gonna totally admit it was a semi-accident.
Chef, a question for me. I keep both types of oats at the house. I keep regular oats, old-fashioned oats, and I keep these quick cooking oats as well. Would the recipe work with either type?
Would it work? Yes. Would the results turn out the same? Not exactly. The old-fashioned oats normally require a longer cooking times because it's not processed as much as the quick oats. So because it's not processed as much, it'll take longer for it to absorb moisture. Comparison to the quick oats, they're processed in a fashion that you can basically, cook them quickly. So because we're making this in the refrigerator, you want to use the either instant or the it's like the 5-minute quick cook oats to make this for it to be the best recipe possible.
Okay.
If you want to use the instant packets, that's perfectly fine. Also, just know that'll definitely alter the nutritional value because some of those packets will have added sugars, especially if it's a flavor like apple cinnamon or maple brown sugar. Now, granted, if you want to do it with that and add that extra flavor into the apple or the maple, I won't stop, whatever floats your boat. But to keep this healthy, we're going to use just the oats and the almonds together. And I'm going to pulse this a little bit more. All right, perfect. So it's got a little bit of powderiness to it, but you can still should have brought a spoon. But you can still see it has. I'm gonna turn this way. I don't know if you can see, it still has the consistency of the actual oats, the oatmeal in it. So it's not just a straight powder. You don't want to get it to be oat flour. Now, if you're making a cake, you want to use oat flour, by all means, powder it up, but we don't want to get to that point. So now we're just going to add in the remainder of the ingredients except for the chocolate chips. So we're going to add in our maple syrup or syrup, however you say it. I get corrected on that all the time. And our vanilla. And our cinnamon and salt. Mine was mixed together just for the ease of use. And then our almond butter.
So a couple of the things that Chef is doing with this recipe, what he just added in there with the cinnamon is some antioxidant activity going in there, especially if we're looking for this as a sports nutrition bar. Those antioxidants will actually help over a long period of time to reduce muscle tenderness or the tenderness that you get after soreness afterwards. That's one of the great benefits of using a spice like cinnamon.
All right, so got my cap on here. And I'm just gonna pulse this just a bit to get it going. So if you just like go full blast at it, what you'll get is like those clumps and you're gonna be stirring this for years. So I just like to pulse it a little bit just for it to kind of pick up, and then I will increase the pulse. Do this way, so you can kind of see how it looks from the front. There we go. Now we're cooking. So you can see by the sides, it's starting to pull in. It's starting to pull in the dry ingredients, which this is a perfect consistency that we want. So if you were to just put this on full blast, what happens is all this stuff would go all the way up the sides and it would be stuck. And then at the bottom, because of how fast the blade would be going, it would create too much heat. So it would start to really stick at the bottom of the blender. So if it's starting to stick at the bottom of the blender, that means you might have it up a little too high. But this is actually turning out better than the one I made earlier today. So I'm gonna keep pulsing this a couple of times. All right, so now you've got that sound. That means that it's in the middle. You see how it's starting to cake up at the bottom, which is how we want it to be. So then we'll just do a couple good stirs. way you know it's ready to go is when it no longer has the powdery look to it. It should look like wet oatmeal. It's a little patience, you know. Maybe sing a song, make a TikTok, do a dance.
So you could do this yourself with, say you didn't have a blender. You would just need some time to work the ingredients in, maybe using a fork or I know what a pastry blender is. I don't know if people would have that, but I think you would be able to do it. It would just take some time, as you say, to work
Right.
all the ingredients in.
So if you didn't use a blender or a food processor, if you did it the by hand method, of course your bar would be a little more rustic, for lack of a better term, because it wouldn't chop up the oats. The oats would still be whole, which is fine. You just might need to play with it a little longer to make it come to.
Okay.
And actually, that's great if you have young children or even seniors and you're looking for something for them to do to get their hands kind of involved. I mean, of course, if they have arthritis, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but just, you know, to kind of work out the hands, develop those gross and fine motor skills. I'm like, chef, how do you know about gross and fine motor skills? I worked at a preschool for 4.5 years. So the lovely thing about it was the children went home at the end of the day. Those who have children probably can be touched. All right, I think we're almost done. All right, I'm gonna call that one a quit. I think that'll be it. So I'm gonna grab a piece of this. So which one? Oh yes, perfect. So what you basically wanna see is when you squeeze this between your hands, it should stay stuck together.
All right.
All right. I'm gonna slide this out the way. I'm gonna grab my bowl.
One of the other
Voila.
really nice ingredients of this protein bar or granola bar is that the fiber in it is coming from a whole grain, which is the oatmeal that you see in here. So oatmeal has a lot of very healthy benefits. You already, I'm sure, have heard about the cardiovascular benefit for that, for helping to keep our arteries nice and clean and smooth. But it also, for long-lasting activity in our gut, has the ability to satiate you for a longer period of time, because it takes longer for that for your body to break down the starches in there. They're complicated starches and it takes a little while. And that adds to the feeling of fullness. And it also helps regulate your blood sugars as well. So this oat component in here is a great ingredient for health-wise and for keeping you keep the hunger pains away as well.
All right, perfect. We all get those hunger pains. So if you're a granola bar person, I know everyone's had the oats and honey ones where you take a bite and all the crumbles just go everywhere. This is not going to be that type of bar. It's going to be more on the chewy side, but it should still be, you know, kind of firm and hold together. So I'm just go ahead and add in my chocolate chips into this. To be honest, I think the chocolate chips are a little big of a bite for the consistency of the bar. So in another world, I would probably pulse the chocolate chips separately just to chop them up a little bit. Or if they have like chocolate shavings or things like that in the store, you can definitely use that. But this will work just fine. So I'm going to incorporate that together. All right. And don't be afraid to kind of play around with it. The heat from your hands is what's going to really help this kind of come together some more. So you don't want to have, you know, ice cold ingredients, because then it'll be all day. But definitely, you know, working in. And as you can kind of see, the chocolate chips are starting to get a little shiny. That means that the moisture is starting to seep out of them and seep into everything else, which is perfect. Most chocolate chips or things like this come with a slight coating to keep it from sticking together in the bag. But once you activate and kind of get that coating off of it, it'll definitely stick together to whatever product you are putting it in. So now I'm going to take this, and it says to use a parchment lined pan. You can if you want to. You don't have to. I wouldn't recommend necessarily spraying a pan with like oil, because that'll, of course, change it. But if you have like some extra almond, actually, that's what I'm gonna do. Chef, you're so smart. I know. I'm gonna take what's left over in this pan of almond. It's okay. You don't have to co-sign that Chef is smart. I know. I'm gonna scrape out the rest of the almond butter out of here and kind of use this as my my grease or my wannabe parchment paper.
All right, so like a pan release.
Yeah, there it is, like a pan release.
Oh, great idea. Great idea.
I'm just gonna kind of massage this over here. Now, if you want to use a dish that actually fits your granola bars, by all means. Of course, I just didn't. I'm pretty good at forming things, so I'm just gonna start to form mine here. So I'm gonna grab a handful, and I'm just gonna press it down this way. I'm gonna kind of build some walls, and then we'll fill it in the middle. Everybody see? Okay.
I guess you could also use some muffin tins for this, Chef. Would that work as well?
Yeah, of course. Want to make them, want to make them round, or if you have like a bread loaf pan, or like a brownie pan, that would also work perfectly.
I'll mention those chocolate chips that you were talking about earlier while you're forming that in there. The deeper, the darker the chip or the cocoa or the chocolate chip, the more cacao. That's what we're looking for in there. The cacao is the ingredient that's giving it the antioxidant in this. And the darker chocolate has an antioxidant called polyphenol. And again, we know more and more is coming, more research is coming about antioxidants and their capacity, especially for reducing inflammation. So you could use any type of chocolate in there that you wanted, but the dark chocolate is for its antioxidant capacity. Chef, was that what you were speaking about earlier?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So I've got my square-ish rectangle, rhombus, trapezoid, whatever you want to call it, kind of formed up here. And I've just been pressing it together and then pressing it down and then pushing it back together. So you don't want to press it too hard to where it keeps expanding out, because what happens when it expands out, you'll get a crumbly bar comparison to an actual like formed bar. So as you're pressing it, you want to press towards the middle while you're pressing down. So I'm pressing from the sides while I'm pressing from the top. All right. This looks like it's formed nicely. All right. And there you go. Look at that, voila. You just take this and you set this in your refrigerator or freezer if you don't have the time for the refrigerator. Of course, the only thing about the freezer is if you freeze it, then the water content that is in the maple syrup and or the almond butter will expand. And then when it defrosts per se, it'll add a moisture to it because that water content has now kind of seeped out. So I wouldn't recommend freezing it. I would say just to refrigerate it. So here's the one that I did. Of course, I used a pan that was way too big for my application, but that's fine. This is actually pretty firm. Like you can see I'm pressing on it. There's no indentation. I lost my knife to cut this. Oh, there it is. All right. So I'm going to do a nice cut down the middle. Look at that. There it is. There's your bar. If you want to make it into little snack sizes, you can definitely cut that into a square. Then you can just put these in a container and refrigerate those. I would say maybe 3 to 5 days max, only because it's the oats, and once it actually starts to absorb everything, the quality of it could definitely go down. And you might have to, give it a little love if it seems to crumble just slightly, of course, because it wasn't baked. There's no egg. There's no binder to hold it, so it's going to crumble a bit. But it's got some pretty good hold to it. Like I'm pretty heavy-handed, and this isn't really the chocolate chip did fall out, but other than that, it's holding together nicely. All right, now I'm going to try it.
So if you're using this as a protein bar and you're using it as a recovery, especially with sports nutrition related or after a sports event or before a sports event, this particular recipe is the regular recipe. It says it has 12 servings in it. So in each of those servings, 1/12 of a serving is around 200 calories. I think around 220 is the exact amount in here, or with an approximation of that, which is about what you want to keep if you're looking for using a sports bar, or if you're using it as to hold you over between meals as something to snack on. Around 2 calories is a good combination. I wanted to point out a couple of things about this. A sports bar or a protein bar normally has about 10 grams of protein in it. This particular bar has a little less than that, but it's very versatile because you could actually increase the amount of protein with this by, number one, changing it over to peanuts if you wanted to. Peanuts have got about 15% more protein in them than almonds do. So that would increase the protein content probably by about 3 grams a bar. The other thing to consider with this is to take it, especially if you're using it in a sports nutrition or a recovery, is to have a glass of milk with it or some yogurt with it. Chef, I think this would be pretty good crumbled up in yogurt myself, or a top yogurt. What do you think?
It definitely would, especially if you're getting down to that 3 to 4 day mark where it's like, oh, I've ate this 3 days in a row. I kind of want to do something else with it. Definitely crumble it up on top of that yogurt. Or if you were in our other snack and chats, we did an overnight oats. This would be a perfect topping for an overnight oats for the following morning. I mean, of course, it's oats on oats on oats, so it'll be perfect.
I think that's a really good combination there. So you're looking for this bar. In summary, it has got carbohydrates coming from the maple syrup that was added, as well as some from the almonds and from the oats. And you're looking at a little bit of protein source coming in from the almonds as well. And those are the main components that we're looking for in a sports or recovery bar. Chef also added a little bit of salt, sodium chloride in there for to help with the muscle relaxation. So
yes, and speaking of salt, as always, kosher salt, not iodized, or sea salt. Just beware if you're using sea salt. Don't use the coarse ground sea salt because, of course, those won't break down as you need to. Get the flakes of sea salt, or if you have coarse ground sea salt, grind it up in a spice grinder, or if you have a mortar and pestle, if you're mortar and pestle. If you're old school, you want to just kind of grind it up. That's perfectly fine also.
Looks great. Any questions from anyone?
Questions, comments?
Can I ask one question? How long will it last? How many days will it keep?
Probably 3 to 5 days. I would keep it refrigerated just so it keeps its firm texture. If you leave it out on the counter and it's warm, of course, it will start to melt, for lack of a better word, because the almond butter is in there, which almost is like a peanut butter. So it will start to kind of melt away. But I would keep it in the refrigerator for about 3 to 5 days. I wouldn't keep it too much longer than that, just because that's me. But as you saw, it took like 5 to 7 minutes to make. So it's an easy make if you need to make some more for another day.
I don't think it's going to last
And
that long.
let me ask, no, you can roll them into balls as well, correct?
Oh, of course. Yeah, it was definitely firm enough. You can easily roll them into balls. And if you really want to go into the whole thing, if you melt some dark chocolate down and dip them into dark chocolate, you're going to take that to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can also roll them in cocoa.
Yeah, that too.
That was there. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
You're a great teacher. Mine looks almost like yours, this little square, and now it's ready to go into the refrigerator. So thank you. I'm a runner and my husband rides the bike all the time, so we will definitely use it. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. I'm a runner in the making also. I've done a couple 5Ks this year, so I'm surviving. So this is definitely a great snack for me for after 5K. Well,
Awesome, congratulations.
Thank you. We have a question. Instead of almond butter, is there another type of butter we can use, like peanut butter? I'm going to say yes. The nutritional value, of course, would be a bit different, and Valerie can probably explain that better than I can.
Yeah, so I think that's a great idea. I encourage you to experiment with the nuts that you like and do a combination of them. Peanuts could also be used in this. As I mentioned, they do have a little bit more protein in them, so you could up the protein content of this. I think it would work really well. I think a combination of almonds maybe and walnuts together. I think, you experiment with this. I think there's also an opportunity to add some dried fruit into this as well. And just play with it a
Yeah.
little bit, like, cranberries, craisins would be a good one. Raisins might be a good one. Chopped apricots. I think this recipe has a lot of versatility, especially since we're not baking it.
Yeah. Or banana chips. If you take those banana chips and blend it with the oats and the almonds, you'll get that banana-y flavor.
Great idea.
Of course,
And-
banana chips have some extra sugar in them, but they're still good.
And let me just double check. You did say you could use old-fashioned oats, the regular ones you cook on the stove, correct?
Yeah, so you can use old-fashioned oats. You just might want to pulse them a bit more in the blender to break them down some more because they are made to be cooked longer than the quick.
Sure. Oh,
Oop, we just lost you.
we did. Darn it, I lost your sound.
Chef, we just lost you. Yep. You know what? This happened during the last time that we did this. We lost sound as well.
Yeah, I have no idea. I can hear
Yeah.
you, Valerie.
Yeah, Chef, we lost you there for the last.
You lost me?
Yes, yes. So we heard you say that you could use the oats, but you just have to blend them a little bit.
Oh, I don't know why my mic.
You're back
Can you hear me now?
Yep,
Yeah.
you're
I'm
back
back
now.
now?
We hear you. Uh-huh.
Okay, all right, cool.
Yep.
All right, what was the last thing you heard me say?
So you did say that you could use the regular oats. You just have to blend them because you needed to cut them up a little bit more so you get some of that liquid absorbing into them.
Correct. And also, if when you blend them, if it still seems too powdery and when you go to squeeze it to put it together, if it doesn't come together perfectly, you might add a little bit more of the maple syrup, or you can add some more of the almond butter just to help it come together a bit more. Just, do a little bit at a time because too much, and of course, will be like just kind of smearing around, but just, a little bit, maybe like a quarter of a teaspoon at a time, just to see how it, kind of picks back up. Just like if you're making biscuits or fresh pasta, sometimes you need a little more oil. So you kind of, measure it out here and there.
Oh, thank you. And dates would work well in this as well, correct?
Oh yeah, chopped dates perfectly. Yeah.
Great idea.
I have a question. So what are some considerations if you are in the process of trying to lose weight when it comes to picking between the different ingredients?
Okay, so there's not this isn't really that high in calories for the bar. This is what I said, 1/12 of a bar in here is about 200 calories. So you can cut down a little bit on the carbs would be the calorie source if you wanted to use a light pancake syrup, but that is going to you're going to have to adjust the recipe probably a little bit to do that. It's a little bit more liquidy, if you will, than that. So that'll cut down on some, but it'll make a little bit of a difference in there, maybe 8 or 10 calories per bar. It wouldn't be a lot. This is
What
a
about,
really healthy snack.
What about agave nectar or like the stevia liquid? Would that?
Yeah,
I've never used it. I know agave nectar is a little more liquidy than the maple syrup, just slightly. But as far as the nutritional content, I don't know the difference.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I mean, if you're
Can you
thinking
brush
about
it off?
to control the calorie
okay.
content, I don't know that there's that much of this recipe other than to eat less of it or to eat a half a bar. But because it's really falls within the guidelines of being a really healthy snack.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay. Mm.
No?
No,
All right.
I just want to say thanks so much. This is great.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right.
All right, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Chef and Valerie, for taking the time out to share this wonderful recipe with us and providing this cooking demo. Thank you all for joining us. If you are interested in additional sessions like this, you can email bsuwellness@valdosta.edu and share your feedback. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca, for having
Thanks,
us.
y'all. Stay healthy. Thanks, Chef.
Not a problem.